Consumers, this is the most marketable man in wrestling, Richard Holliday, and you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
This is Alexander Hammerstone, your boy Hammer, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. I am your humble host, James Walsh, and this week we bring you a guest who was trained by one of our former guests. I always get a kick out of that. I love when we have on somebody like Tully Blanchard back in 2003 or 4, and then we have Tessa Blanchard here in 2019. This time we have the trainer and his trainee. In 2006 we had Pretty Paul Roma, Glory, if you will, from Power and Glory, who joined us for an exclusive and incredible interview back then. And I'm going to repost that up on YouTube so you can revisit it as well as check it out at WrestlingEpicenter.com and InteractiveWrestlingRadio.com. And his student, his protege, is making big waves in Major League Wrestling. He is Richard Holliday, the most marketable man in professional wrestling. And consumers, I gotta tell you, this is a fantastic interview with a young man who I think you better start recognizing the face of pretty quick, because he's making some waves in Major League Wrestling as part of the Dynasty. We had Alexander Hammerstone on just a few weeks ago to talk about that Dynasty faction, which includes himself, Mr. Holliday, and MJF, three of the really rising stars over in MLW. You got to check this show out. If you're not watching Fusion every week, you really don't have an excuse not to. It's on beIN Sports every Saturday night. On Monday night, they post the show from Saturday on YouTube for those who don't get beIN Sports. So there is no excuse not to watch this show. If you love logical, good wrestling, modern athletics with logic that was unfortunately something that it almost makes it feel old school because it has a logical booking style. It's not old school, but it has that feel to it just because of the logic. Fusion is for you. Their next big event is September 7th, Dallas, Texas. And they're going to be honoring the late, great Gary Hart there. The Von Erich boys will be there. It is going to be MLW War Chamber. Again, one half of the Tag Team Champions, his partners MJF, joins us this week. It is Richard Holliday, and without any further delay, let's get you to that interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com's Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hey, what's up, my friends and neighbors? This is the Dr. Style Slick, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview. Yeah.
Available in the archives of WrestlingEpicenter.com and InteractiveWrestlingRadio.com. It's our exclusive 2006 interview with Paul Roma. In this hard-hitting interview, Paul Roma recounts the evening of Super Brawl 1995 when he was fired from World Championship Wrestling after a match with Das Wonder Kid, Alex Wright.
Ric Flair,
Okay.
and Eric Bischoff. I'm supposed to work with Alex Wright, make him better. Let him beat me all around, that's fine. I said, I don't mind doing that, but I'm not doing a job for him on a pay-per-view. And they said, no, that won't happen. So then they have a pay-per-view, and it's me against Alex Wright. So I go into, Maryland, I believe, right? Yeah, Baltimore. And, I go up to Flair, and Flair's like, listen, we need Alex over. And I said, now, hold on, Rick. I said, you told me I'd work with him, I'd put him over all around, but I wasn't going to get beat on a pay-per-view. This is what they want. I said, okay, no problem. So if you have a copy of the match, you see when I walk out, I said, this is all about respect, Ruby. And when I walked into the ring, I insulted him, humiliated him, beat him from post to post, and then at the end I let him pin me. So after that, they sent me a nice little FedEx that said we no longer need your services.
Get it now at WrestlingEpicenter.com and InteractiveWrestlingRadio.com. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with us right now is one half of the MLW World Tag Team Champions. He is Richard Holliday. Mr. Holliday, are you with us?
I am with you.
It is a pleasure to have you on, sir. I guess I had to have you on because business had to pick up around here.
Yeah, it's always a smart move to have the most marketable man in wrestling on your podcast. The consumers, they should be flocking to this. Once this is posted, your click rate is going to go through the roof.
I'm sure it is. I'm hoping so. So you use the words most marketable. That's definitely your Twitter handle. That's been your credo. Kind of a cream puff starter for you. But what makes Richard Holliday the most marketable?
Well, I'm not sure what you're implying with a cream puff starter. I'm gonna take that as an insult. But the most marketable man in wrestling, that's a real thing. I have a degree in marketing. I understand marketing. And that's what this business is predicated on. It's in its finest form, all professional wrestling is marketing. And when you take somebody like me, when you look at me in the ring, everything that I do, the way that I speak, the way that I conduct interviews, the way that I can represent a company like Major League Wrestling, well, I think everything just makes sense.
Absolutely. And you were definitely one of the guys that I wanted to have on the show when I started speaking to MLW, because you jump off the screen. You do have the look of the major superstar. You would look the part, and you definitely are the part. So, man, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right. So you were trained by a guy who I interviewed back a long time ago, actually back 13 years ago, and that is Pretty Paul Roma. I was amazed when I spoke to him at the mind of the man. He is really a smart guy. And what did you take away from learning under the learning tree of Pretty Paul Roma?
Well, I couldn't be more grateful to have been trained by Paul Roma. For me personally, he fits exactly the way that I wrestle today. I feel like there's a lot of Paul Roma in me today. Paul has a very controversial perspective on professional wrestling, both from his view and the vantage point of others. So for me, Paul's a tell it how it is kind of guy. He tells you exactly how he feels. I'm sure you got that when you interviewed him as well, especially 13 years ago. But Paul's perspective on the business is exactly how I view it as well. And the way that he teaches it, the way that he taught me, the psychology of wrestling and what it means at its grassroots, I couldn't have been more appreciative to learn under Paul. Truly a blessing.
Absolutely. And did he ever forgive you for the coffee incident that I watched on YouTube?
Oh, when I spit the coffee in Paul's face?
Yeah.
Of course
yes,
he did. I'm his prized student. You can't let one accident of an accidental spitting of coffee in one's face tarnish a relationship. We got over that one very quickly.
Very good. So you guys, being the Dynasty, seem to flock together quickly. And our last week's guest was Alexander Hammerstone. And here we are with another member of the Dynasty and yourself. What about your guys' personalities kind of made you guys conglomerate and come together so quickly?
Well, when we first came together, now we're talking three guys who have alpha male personalities. We're all type A. We're all extroverts. Mm-hmm. And one might assume that 3 type A's, 3 extroverts, 3 alpha males are not going to get along. That it's going to be oil and water. It's not going to mix very well. That was the complete opposite of Max and Hammer and I getting together, because it is just instant chemistry whenever we're on camera. Even when we're off camera, we all just get along incredibly well. We feed off of each other. We make each other better. And for the consumers, from their viewpoint, it's got to be the best wrestling on TV today. So the Dynasty, it really is an enigma. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing for 3 self-made superstars like ourselves to come together and form what we have made on Major League Wrestling television.
Absolutely, and those backstage segments that you guys do are a riot and a lot of fun to watch, and you guys just seem like you're, not to use the word tailor-made, but it's kind of tailor-made to be together.
Well, I like that word and I appreciate it. I'm a suit guy, as you know, and it is tailor-made. it fits perfectly. It just fits perfectly. It flows. It's very fluent, and it's a pleasure to do. And I'm sure for you, it's a pleasure to watch.
It certainly is. It certainly is. So you guys, if you have any rivals in particular, the 3 that come to mind right away are those guys over in the Hart Dynasty, the Hart Foundation of Teddy Hart. You're working with a lot of second-generation guys who really have great lineage in wrestling. Maybe stepping away from the obvious problems you've had on screen, what's it like to work with guys who have such history in wrestling?
Well, I am very sick of talking about the Hart Foundation. However, I will answer your question out of respect. They are, Davey Boy Smith and Teddy Hart in particular they're legends in their own right? Like they're creating their own path, kind of different than their families, right? Like obviously their families have that lineage and they're coming from these historic wrestling families and the lineage is there, but you know, I have to give credit to them because they're absolutely doing their own thing and they're making their own mark in this business. So for me, my first major match in Major League Wrestling was Max and I against Davey Boy and Teddy in Chicago for the MLW Tag Team Championships in front of a sold-out Cicero Stadium. So that was a huge moment for me, and across the ring, and I knew who I was up against, so that was obviously a very big moment in my career, and I had nothing but respect for them. And then there's Brian Pillman Jr., who's around the same age as us, and he's doing his thing too. So he's coming from a great wrestling family as well with his father. So, but that's what I always say about the Dynasty is we're 3 self-made superstars. There's no other Hammerstones, no other Hollidays, there's no other MJFs. We're creating this on our own. So while I do have respect for them, and listen, if I was from a wrestling family, I would want to carry on my wrestling family history as well. So I have no knocks on them whatsoever. But I take a little bit of pride knowing what we're doing on our own. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, I do. When I watch you, I see a little bit of an old school feel to you. I feel a little bit of, don't take offense, but like a Gino Hernandez, a classic Ric Flair. Of course, we also mentioned Paul Roma. When you were deciding to get into professional wrestling, who were some of the guys that you kind of thought, you know what, these guys are cool and I want to be like them?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has their own inspirations and people that they're going to look at and say, well, yeah, I could take a little bit of that and I could take a little bit of that. But I do want to say it's very important to have your own lane and try to stick to that the best that you can. However, guys like Flair, guys like Randy Orton, guys like Macho Man, I mean, these are the guys who are Ted DiBiase and especially Paul, because I've had such a hands-on approach to Paul that I ended up kind of watching him and researching him a little bit more than other people. But those are the people who have inspired me and who I've been able to take little pieces from and put them into my own.
Absolutely, and it's working great, and it's one of the biggest parts of Major League Wrestling. I want to talk a little bit about MLW and the incredible growth that we're seeing from the brand that is MLW. You guys have a weekly TV show with beIN Sports, and basically you guys are kind of on the forefront of wrestling with all the changes that are happening right now. How do you feel about where MLW is heading into the end of 2019 and the debut pay-per-view Super Fight?
I could not be more confident about the landscape of Major League Wrestling at the moment. Think about it. So there really is this huge change going on in the business, in the industry. There's so many moving parts, and so many people are talking about this and that and the other thing. But MLW is very much in its own lane. We have think about what we have. We have national television live every Saturday night on beIN Sports at 9 p.m. Then we're going to take that episode, we're going to put it on YouTube on Monday, 7 p.m. So we're going to get the internet exposure. We have a great social media presence. Upon from that, we just signed to have television in Africa. We have television in the UK, in Ireland. We have a relationship with Pro Wrestling Noah for a talent exchange to go to Japan. My boy Hammer is in Japan right now, representing the Dynasty, representing MLW. We just signed a deal with the Crash Lucha for Mexico. So who knows? Maybe another member of the Dynasty goes over there. So we are really just expanding and growing at a rapid rate, and it's a pleasure to be part of that growth.
One of the biggest things that I love about MLW is the attention to detail. And you guys are heading into Dallas. You got the Von Erich boys are going to be part of that show. You're going to be paying tribute at that event to the great late Gary Hart. I mean, it's very cool that you guys, in addition to paving your own lane into the future, you have enough respect for the past to get an old fart like myself to enjoy, to appreciate what you guys do as well.
Well, we're a professional wrestling company. That's what we are. So, going to a historic landmark like Dallas, with the Von Erich family, made famous. So to go there with the Von Erichs is obviously very cool. But I always say, some consumers might go to the show for the Von Erichs, but they're going to leave talking about the Dynasty, right? But like you said about Gary Hart, we have to pay homage to the history of professional wrestling. We understand what professional wrestling is and how important, honoring the history of it is. So, I think that MLW does a great job of blending the past with the present, with the future. We do everything in an hour time slot. As a professional wrestling consumer, we're going to give you exactly what you want from a storyline perspective, from an in-ring perspective, history, futuristic, everything about it is going to be perfect.
I think so, and I'm looking forward to seeing it as it continues to progress. So one of your MLW Dynasty partners is MJF, who's moonlighting a little bit with a little company called AEW. Kind of wanted to get your take on AEW and how it impacts, if at all, what you guys are doing over in MLW.
I don't think it impacts what we're doing in MLW at all. If anything, it's great that Max is doing his thing in AEW, because at the end of the day, what's that going to do? It's just going to get more eyes on MLW, right? Because if people are following Max, and if maybe they're not familiar with MLW, say, oh, well, what's this? I didn't know he was here. Boom, they watch it. It's another click for us, which is great. My take on AEW is it's just good for the business, right? I mean, that just means that the business is prospering. If another company is able to kind of do what they're doing at the moment, then that means that the market is good. And we all want the market to be good, especially when you're in the business. So having the market good is never a bad thing. Competition is never a bad thing. I don't pay too much attention to it because it's not my lane. I'm not trying to make AEW grow. I'm trying to make MLW grow. So that's where all my focus and attention goes, But I have no negative things to say about it. And I'm happy for Max.
Absolutely, and you kind of just answered my next question, but I got to ask it anyway, because when I say I'm having one of you guys on, the first question I get from the bubbleheads on the internet is, do you have any desire, any hope of going to AEW or the WWE, or is MLW home for you?
MLW is home right now. MLW is home. I'm a very big believer in being where your feet are. You have to be focused on where you're at. Because if you're not going to give 110%. You're not going to make the most out of where you are. So I'm in MLW right now. I'm in a prime position in MLW right now. I'm one half of the MLW Tag Team Champions, and I take a lot of pride in that. So I am fully focused on developing this brand, growing my brand within this brand, and just growing together. That's ultimately what we're trying to accomplish.
Very good. I can see a lot of pride in your Twitter picture when you posted the picture of yourself with the MLW World Tag Team title. That's got to be very cool to hold one of the championships so young into your career of one of the major companies in the world. Yeah.
I mean, growing up, I always, fancied myself, growing up in the business, I mean to say, always fancied myself more of a singles competitor. So holding MLW Tag Team Championship is definitely a change in mindset for me, but one that I've grown very accustomed to, and I'm very proud of it. And I think it's just going to be a launching pad for more good within MLW. There's a lot of championships out there. My boy Hammer has the National Openweight Championship, so he can keep that one for as long as he'd like, and I think he's going to keep it for a very long time. But there's the Heavyweight Championship. There's the Middleweight Championship. Well, so who knows where I can go? Maybe I'll hold 3 titles in MLW. It's possible.
Well, that's definitely possible. You guys almost hold all the gold right now in MLW, so it's going to be great to see what happens as we head towards November 2nd, Super Fight. I mentioned it once before. I told Hammer, and I'll tell you, when I was a college kid, I bought a VHS tape of MLW Genesis, which was the first show you guys ran, to kind of think that you guys are the same company. Here we are 17 years later, and you guys are going on pay-per-view, and that's, that used to be the stamp of if you made it or not, and you guys got it. So what does Super Fight mean to you as we head into November 2nd?
November 2nd is undoubtedly going to be the biggest night of not only my career, but, dare I say MLW's. We're going on pay-per-view. This isn't weekly television for free. This is you need to pay per view, right? So that is huge. And to take that risk and to take that leap of faith, it just shows me that I'm with the right company. I'm with a company that's willing to take that risk. And in the marketplace, you have to do that in order to grow. That has to happen. There's always that expression in the back of my mind of scared money doesn't make any money, right? It's like an old gambling term, but in essence, that's what it is. It's scared money's not going to make any money. If you're not going to take the risk to go on, if you don't believe in your product enough to go on pay-per-view and say, hey, my product is good enough for a consumer to pay-per-view, then you're in the wrong business. So I am so fully behind this. I'm looking forward to it. November 2nd, Super Fight live on pay-per-view for MLW is going to be a historic night. I promise you that.
All right, well, we're going to let you go in just one second, but I just wanted to thank you for taking the time and doing this with me here today. You definitely have a lot going for you over in MLW, and you are definitely one of the top rising stars in that promotion. So I appreciate you taking the time and doing this here with me today.
I appreciate you having me, and I want to plug my social media because you didn't ask me.
I was going to. I'll ask you to plug it.
I got to ask you to plug the social media. That's how you do it. So follow me at Most Marketable. That's on Instagram and Twitter. Same handle. Make it easy for the consumers. Follow me on both.
All right, and before I let you go, can I ask for a station ID, a liner, if you will, saying this is Richard Holliday, and you're in the Wrestling Epicenter, and I'm stuttering like a son of a gun, and I don't know why. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, you got it.
You don't have to say that part. I'm just kidding.
Consumers, this is the most marketable man in wrestling, Richard Holliday, and you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You maniacs, so what you gonna do?
The greatest wrestler on earth.
Oh, yeah.
All right, sports fans out there.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview. And you're listening to The Blaze.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Let me talk to you, dummies.
Hey, baby. Open your third eye.
I set the guy on fire.
And you are listening to the Interactive Interview.
You're listening to the Hour Slam Wrestling.
Hey, you're checking out Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And I'm so pleased and so honored to be guest on the Wrestling Epicenter. I've heard a lot about you guys.
You see all the charisma.
And sit up straight when I'm talking to you.
I wrestled each one of them more times than I care to remember.
The living legend.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Guess what? You're listening to The Blaze.
check it out.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. You are on the Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
It's showtime!
Woo!
One more time, it's a beer time.
To create some things that had never been done.
And you are listening to the Interactive Interview.
And you're listening to The Blaze.
You are watching Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're in the epicenter.
Make sure to tune in each and every week.
Phenomenal one.
He is the best wrestler I've ever seen.
Dr. Carol S.
And of course, you're listening to the Interactive Interview. And I want all my peeps, all the Christian Coalition, to know they're listening to The Blaze.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Where else? In the Wrestling Epicenter.
From a purist point of view. They're great. By ignorance or arrogance.
You're where it's at, right here online.
If you're smart like me, you'll be listening to Interactive Interview. I do all the time.
You're listening to The Blaze. Interactive Wrestling Radio. You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Rickabody!
Just a lot of hijinks and immaturity at its finest.
The NWA World's Heavyweight Champion, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview. Is that really it? Is that it? Can I hold it? Can I touch it?
For different bullshit political reasons. And
you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are on the Wrestling Epicenter.
World Heavyweight Champion, and you're listening to Blaze 1260 AM.
But at the end of the day, it's about charisma.
I got two words for you. He's invincible and untouchable.
The Rocker.
The World Champion.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview. You're listening to 3 Count Wrestling.
And you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The torch is passed to the next generation, and it's still burning brightly.
I am the past, present, and future professional wrestling. Welcome to the Interactive Interview.
Barry Horowitz is a great wrestler. His opponents just wrestle great.
The needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few.
You are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
There was a genuine brothership.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
It's probably outrageous. It probably doesn't make sense. Kind of pinch myself to be sure I'm still here if it wasn't gone already.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
He's very different than what you see on TV.
You better be watching and listening to 3 Count Wrestling, or else I'm going to kick your stinking teeth in.
You're listening to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Why not me? Why wasn't I pushed like that?
I said, this is all about respect, Ruby.
And you're listening to the Interactive Interview. Yeah.
You boys, apart from each other, are the shits. After a while, you just don't give a shit.
2005 and 2006 is not back in the day.
You're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember doing that one.
And you're listening to Interactive Interview. Prime time, baby.
My lineage carries me to higher ground.
And the gospel, according to the fallen angel, says that you are listening to the Interactive Interview.
And you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
There is a little bit of everything for everybody in this promotion.
Oh, my brother, testify.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Keep listening and have yourself an eargasm.
Interactive Interview. That's #1, baby.
Thank you very much.
I don't think they have any guts.
My brother from another.
Trying to teach wrestling the right way to let them know what it takes.
Because Jimmy and I really weren't wrestlers per se. You know, we're more showmen.
Pick up your copy, Woo Mercy Daddy. While you're here, baby, stay.
and I'm glad to be right here on the interactive interview.
I don't want to come into this thing too hot.
And you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
I decided to return as a world-class wrestler.
And you are now listening to the Wrestling Epicenter. TikTok. And you better keep listening.
On your radio dial. And if you don't listen to it, I'm going to come down and knock down your door and turn it on for you.
Or I'll come out of your computer and body slam your ass.
You're catching me on the interactive interview. Sweet.
Hello, everybody.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
And you're listening to Interactive Radio.
And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, ba, ba, ba. Hello. Hey, interview, George. Oh.
The only thing I do is stomp and punch and kick, bite.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
Oh, baby. You're tuning in to The Blaze.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Don't be a Melvin and get into the Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hey, man, you're talking about future world champion, baby.
No offense, my friend. No offense. You're one of the good guys. You're one of the good ones.
Hey, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed talking with you guys.
I really have Terry Funk to credit.
The interactive interview.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
And I'm not mad because I'm interactive.
Been going to Wrestling Epicenter.
Stay tuned and feel the...
Well, everybody knows the answer to that. Nobody. Breaking necks and cashing checks right here in the epicenter.
Hey, why don't we call the finishing move the chronic kick?
And you are listening to the interactive interview.
You're listening to the interactive interview, the second best tag team in the world today.
To the interactive interview. If you don't like that, sorry about your damn luck.
You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Remember me?
I'm one guy who was afraid of man, who was a man's man.
Well, I already didn't like him worth a shit. I mean, excuse my language.
The shotgun deal is the biggest boom deal. Talking about gimmicks going bad.
Oh, interactive interview. Tough guy.
MAD USA, made in the USA, baby. You are listening to Interactive Interview.
You are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Be a man or be a woman and say it to my face.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
Well, I haven't been called that in almost 20 years.
You're in the Wrestling Epicenter. And made it look like you were really killing somebody or being killed.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
I got my gun out and I was going to shoot him.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
I appreciate y'all talking to me this long. Most people done hung up on me.
And you're listening to Interactive
Wrestling Radio.
All right.
We took care of the business, guys. We really took care of the business.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
Make sure you listen to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Time to listen, and if you like what you heard, I'm glad. If you didn't like what you heard, well, go fuck yourself.
Written in wrestling before that day was considered the Old Testament, and we were going to write the New Testament.
It was anti-establishment. It was cool. It was hip. It was a bunch of guys having a good time.
I do remember that you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
I love Lucy.
And you're listening to the interactive interview. Nevermore. You are listening to the interactive interview.
Stop trying to ride my coattail.
You listen to the Interactive Interview.
It just clicked. It just clicked from the beginning.
You're listening to the Interactive Interview, so don't sing it, just swing it.
Nothing else comes close.
Interactive interview.
Being the drizzling shit, they'll follow gracefully.
The entire audience was clapping.
The Blaze Rock. You got to listen right here. Interactive interview.
You're listening to the interactive interview, and remember, we are huge rock stars.
Let's go with looks that kill. You're listening to me on the Weekend Wars of Wrestling on the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hello, ladies.
And it was the sexiest man on earth.
I'm not just the coolest. I'm not just the best.
I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
And you're listening to The Blaze, 1260 AM.
I hear it all the time, baby.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
You're listening to The Blaze.
You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
And plus, it's a cool name. And you are in the epicenter.
So do you want to play wrestling? And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
When you look at a group of, like, the Nitro Girls, then you're listening to the interactive interview.
Be as good as the guys, if not better.
And you're listening to The Blaze.
And really, really want to prove myself to those fans.
You are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Turn it up.
And I love being interactive with these guys.
And you're listening to the interactive interview. Capture some of that magic.
You are listening to the interactive interview.
I'd love to see everyone at my website.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Oh, look at me. I'm trying so hard.
And you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
He really inspired me a lot. Everybody loves porn. Everybody loves nude girls, you know? You can't go wrong.
You're listening to me on the interactive interview.
Oh, yeah. Right. Oh, my God.
You're listening to 3 Count Wrestling.
The standard, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much the standard, you know.
What about y'all, the interactive interview?
If the position was offered to me, I sure as hell wouldn't turn it down.
And you are listening to Wrestling Epicenter. Check it out.
Wow, that was unbelievable. You're listening to the interactive interview.
Ready to shake things up on here and have some fun.
And you're listening to the interactive interview.
And you're listening to Wrestling Epicenter.
It's not that you're old, it's that I'm really young.
The greatest online radio show of all time, the interactive interview.
They really popped for it, so you never seen a girl do that move.
You're listening to interactive wrestling. I would like to say he's a smart man. You're listening to interactive wrestling radio. Bam!
I try my best to be a good role model.
On the Wrestling Epicenter. He didn't care who he stepped on to get where he needed to go. Interactive Wrestling Radio. Things have been going amazing so far.
You are in the Wrestling Epicenter. Pinkies up.
He's so kooky.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Hey, I am a legend in my own mind.
We're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Stupid for working for free. Stupid. And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
My mom and dad were both wrestlers. I grew up in it. I love the business.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
One of the best champions that the business ever had.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
I think you used the key word. It was run professionally. It certainly was.
Gordon says, come on, I'll help you. And he took him under his wing.
He was definitely a different person.
And you are listening to James and Patrick.
I love working with these guys.
You're listening to the interactive interview with James Walsh and Dan Edler.
You don't want to miss it. We've only got a few left. Pick up the phones right now and dial.
I've been to the psych ward 6 times during my writing.
Okay, the last show, and I couldn't, and I gave up. I thought it was a horrible bit, and maybe it was.
If you've never been, guys, and you're a fan of wrestling, come on out. And more questions about WrestleMania 3, and I'll do all the other WrestleManias.
If you're writing a love story and you've never been in love,
sometimes it may not be exactly true, but we're talking about pro wrestling.
You're listening to the interactive interview.
We partied with them every damn night.
The above average, the interactive interview.
I haven't heard a complaint about him yet.
You're listening to interactive radio, and you better not touch that dial, or your thumbs will be broken.
I like Elvis, the interactive interview. You wish you could have that moment back after you've been on TV for a while so you actually enjoy it.
If you want to go anywhere, you have any kind of substance or anything that's worth a crap, you're in the politics.
Listen, just let me be me.
He just magnified himself by 10.
Everybody's looking for a place, and there's so many wrestlers out there right now.
Nobody has beaten that record yet.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
And you're tuned in to the Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Oh, hell yeah. And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
You asked me excellent question.
Anything about that little bastard.
No, this is a wrestling accent.
Always related to the wrestling.
Master, you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive interview.
Yeah, the boys are playing. You know, it's just, I wish they'd go to sleep. And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
What's your incentive? You see, athletes can't be allowed to sit in a comfort zone.
Memphis Wrestling was better than the event we just saw.
From professional wrestling to sports entertainment.
This division is very important to me.
To the Interactive interview.
Controversy creates cash, and you're listening to the Pile Driver.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Oh, what a rush. You are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Welcome for Penta in Spanish, please. Cero miedo, ánimo.
Órale, arriba la raza.
Viva la raza.
The Interactive interview. Arriba!
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And this is live from the Wrestling Epic Center.
And you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The Interactive interview.
You put in the Hall of Fame, you'll never be forgotten. And you're in the Epicenter.
You know, it was when they first gave it to me, it was a little tough because, wearing all the makeup.
From the year of the Epicenter. You know, now looking back, I'm sure there's a lot of people going, God, I wish there was a WCW around.
Like it or not, you are listening to the Pile Driver.
See you there, my children. Bring them all.
And you're in the epicenter.
So I looked around the dressing room, nobody moved.
And you're in the epicenter.
Biggest event of the entire year.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Really, I didn't really want to do it.
The Wrestling Epicenter. Yes, sir.
You know, those guys helped pave the way.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
If they give you that opportunity, it's because of your hard work.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are inside the Wrestling Epicenter.
You can go out and do 2 or 3 things and be able to get over it. I don't think they're real concerned with historical accuracy. I almost killed the son of a gun in Japan one night.
Over and over. Now I'm back on, and now you piss me off.
Let me liven up the party a little bit with a little song.
Who's next?
423, get fame. That's 423, get fame.
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you are in the Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
And you're in the Wrestling Epicenter.
The Epicenter.